What's up, guys? America's Paramedic here, and with the Sleepy Paramedic today. So let's say, hey, what's up, Sleepy?
What's going on, guys? How you doing?
Good, man. How's life treating you today?
Busy as always, but finally found a couple of minutes to sit down and get away from work.
Yeah, same. This is work for me, is trying to manage a business and, of course, start and grow this very awesome new podcast and this chance to hang out with you for a little bit, which I've been super excited for this. I can't tell you how much I look up to you and how much I respect you a lot. So for me to have this opportunity, man, is honestly, from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate everything you're doing for us and I respect the hell out of you. So thank you.
I'm just glad. I'm glad to have the opportunity to work with you guys, and I'm grateful for everything you've done with helping me get some of these guys into school.
Yeah, man, and the students that you've put here, they love it, dude. They absolutely love it. I know Cameron, his fiance, is actually applying to be in the program, and I think she sent you her stuff too. She wants to apply for it too. She's super excited, and so they're loving it. So I appreciate the support. You're helping our program grow. You're helping us get better EMS training out to everybody else. And my goal is to take my experiences that I had, going through it and improving that and making it so other people don't have to go through the hell and the misery that I went through.
Exactly.
Right? Turner, I think, what's the song? It's Humble and Kind. So turn around and help the next one in line. And I think that's so big. I think that applies in EMS. And I think if I could ever have like a mission theme, it would be turn around and help the next EMS provider in line. Get where I'm going and turn back around. I think that's just, I was singing that song to my kiddo when I was singing him to sleep the other night, and it just kind of hit me and it resonated. And I was like, man, I think that would be so great. Like, I think if every EMS provider turned around and did something good for somebody else, it would make this field a hell of a lot better.
Hey, just take care of your brothers and sisters. I got
Yeah.
really lucky. I had excellent EMT and excellent paramedic instructors that actually really cared about what they were doing because they lived in the community where we were all going to be working. So I like that you guys care as much as they did. That's why I really support what you guys do and try to support your program.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I actually had the opposite experience. I had a dick instructor, and it was such a bad experience. But the best thing, I was really lucky and fortunate in that I had a previous adult career. Not like adult, but like adult, like grown up big boy. Before, and I learned a lot of really valuable life lessons as I went into EMS. And so I think if I hadn't had that, it probably would have burned me out and it probably would have jacked up and made me even more mentally screwed up than I already am, but dark and twisted. But, I was really lucky that I had the previous experience to draw on. Specifically, I had paramedic instructor and EMT instructor that completely just said, you do everything. I'm here going to sit here and text on my phone and I'm not going to pay attention and I'm not going to do anything and you're going to do everything. And if you miss something, I will yell and curse and scream at you and make you realize what a giant screw up you are because you can't do anything. And so that experience shaped me because I think being a former cop, I learned I had really good FTOs and really bad FTOs. And I went through the whole life crisis of having a bad FTO. And I had the advice from somebody that says you can take everything, you can take something from everything and you can learn whether good or bad and put it on your belt. And if you have a bad experience with a training officer, then you know what not to do.
Exactly.
And so I think if I hadn't had that advice, I think I would have been even more dark and twisted than I already am. But I would have hated EMS a lot more. And so when I had my bad experience with my paramedic FTO, I think it shaped me in a better way because I was like, I want to be the opposite of that for my students. So
You basically turned into Batman.
basically, I like that. I like that analogy, the Batman of
Right.
EMS. I like that.
You had a very dark back alley origin story.
Yeah, it was actually crazy. So as a student, I had 3 rotations. I rode with Organization A. I'm not going to say who they are, and then Organization B, and then I went back to Organization A for my 3rd rotation. And so the first and the third were with the same guy. And when I went to the second one, I went to a fire station, and they were like, they very much were like, whoa, you're doing everything. And I'm like, yeah, because I had to for this last dude. And they were like, okay, like it can make you like realize you have a team, like you can chill, you don't have to do everything. Like let us help you, like give us what tasks, what you want us to do. And so that was kind of my lesson, having to delegate. But I think, and then when I went back to the first guy and I had to go back to the way I was, I kind of got a good, like, I guess, example of what to do and what not to do, and kind of how to delegate. And then, but it prepared me for those times where I didn't have anybody to delegate to and I had to do it all by myself. So I do appreciate that guy for teaching me valuable lessons in how to handle things when I didn't have anybody else to help me. You know what I mean?
Sure. We actually had a unique opportunity because our EMT instructor actually worked at the same time. You could go and do third rides with her and her partner. So I remember thinking it would be cool to go and ride with my instructor, and I hopped on her truck and realized very quickly that she was going to put everyone through the meat grinder. The first call that I remember going on, I was in the back. We were coming back from lunch. They got a call from unresponsive. I was still super new and super unsure of myself. And she said, okay, be thinking about reasons why someone might be unresponsive. We'll be there in 10 minutes and you're going to make first contact. This is your call. We won't let you kill anyone, but we're going to let you get right up to that point before we step in. It's like, oh my God. But it kind of helped being thrown into the water like that.
Mm-hmm.
Terrifying, but
Yeah.
they're right. If I growing up, they would step in and so they wouldn't jump and bite my head off either. It wasn't, what are you doing, you moron, you're going to kill him. It was, instead of trying that, why don't we do this instead and see how this works? And then after it was done, it was, you moron, what are you doing? You were going to kill him.
Right. Yeah, no, same exact thing. And I can totally relate. It's terrifying. Like my first EMS call ever was a 6-month-old that was having a febrile seizure on base. And so the military dad had just gotten deployed like the week before or whatever. And the mom was home alone for the first time, first deployment alone without the husband, right? Like they're like probably young 20s at the time. And first child, first everything, show up, and the kid was cyanotic blue and actively still seizing when I walked through the door. And my FTO looked at me and was like, what are you gonna do? Like, figure it out, like sink or swim kind of deal. And so I remember I was like, benzo. And so like I drew up my benzos and I got it on board. And then afterwards, he actually pointed out to me, and I'm the kind of instructor, first of all, that I love to tell about my mistakes, because I believe that if I can use it in a lecture, that maybe the students won't make the same mistakes I made, right? I like to be honest about my screw ups, and the first time I ever did a call, it was a screw up, and I actually gave an IM dose. I gave the IVIO dose in an IM setting. So I basically drew up half of what I was supposed to give, because you know how you're supposed to double it for IM or whatever. And so I gave the IVIO dose for the kid. And so he got back and he's like, you realize like it worked, but you underdosed the kid by half. And he's like, you always have to remember to double your benzo doses. But it was day one, call one. My brain was going crazy. And I was like, it was like sink or swim. And he was like, kind of similar, next time we should try this. And then he got it in the rig and he's like, what are you doing? After the call. And I was like, oh, I felt so bad. And I always remembered that lesson of double it for IMIN and half it for IVIO, So it was like, that's how I really learned that principle. But that was my first call, was a 6-month-old seizing kid.
I bet you never forgot the dosage again, did you?
Nope.
It's okay to screw up as long as you don't screw up the same way twice.
Exactly. To this day, I harp on my students how I'm like, 0.1 per kilo, 0.2 per kilo, IMIN. And they're like, okay. So
I had a similar experience. It wasn't actually a call. This was on a sim man in the classroom. The dean for the entire health science department, who was also a paramedic, came in and he was helping out, which the man was like 5 foot tall, but super imposing. Like he was terrifying to be around, because he'd forgotten more about EMS than any of us knew.
Right.
So I walked into the room where my patient was, and the sim man, his lips were cyanotic and he had decreased breath sounds. And I started going through, I did my little assessment, and we determined that he was in anaphylaxis. And my instructor's like, okay, so what's the first thing you do for anaphylaxis? And I was like, well, let's go ahead and get a breathing treatment ready. And he looked at me and he goes, what's the first thing you do for anaphylaxis? You don't give them a fucking breathing treatment. And he just knife hand laid into me, and
Oh,
I
wow.
never made that mistake again. It was like breathing treatment if you have time on the way to the hospital after you administer epi and get steroids on board and do everything else.
Right.
Jumped on me in front of everybody else and like scared the bejesus out of me, but I never made that mistake again.
Yeah. Man. Yeah. First time I think I got ripped into, what was it? It was, oh, so I'll tell you this. It was my very first cardiac arrest ever. That's what it was. So there I was as a brand new paramedic, right? I was like a pink patch, like not even red, like I'm talking like hot pink, like baby fetus paramedic, right? So I was like neonate. So I was like, all right, I was praying every day because I never really got to. So my paramedic school never let us actually like drop meds or never let us like actually like practice the code because their mannequins were like these $150,000 mannequins. And they're like, you won't look at the mannequin, you won't touch the mannequin, you won't breathe on the mannequin. Like you can't even think about the mannequin. And I'm like, okay. So they had us verbalize everything, right? So I got really damn good at like verbalizing everything. So I'm on my first cardiac arrest call and people are looking at me and they're like, okay, like you're running it. And I'm like, okay. I would walk in the door and I would go BSI scene safe. And I like went through like everything, right? And they were like, no, actually do it. And I'm like, what? And they're like, actually do it. And I was like, I don't know how to actually do it, but I know how to verbalize it. And my FTO looks at me and goes, are you going to sit there and do something? Or are you actually going to just sit there and talk? Or are you actually going to do something about it? And I was like, oh, okay. So like I put on my gloves and I was like, I'll bag the patient. And they're like, no. And they're like, you have to like get everything on the patient and get IV access. And I'm like, I can talk you through it. And I know how to talk you through it really well. So, that was really the first time I got laid into because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know, like, and I had prayed for months. I was like, I'd get on the rig and I go, God, do not give me a code today. That's the one thing I don't want is a code. Like, I don't know what to do. Do not give me a code. So that was kind of like my, like, intimidating moment for me until I actually first ran my code. And then after that, I was like, okay, this isn't so bad. I mean, they're dead. They can't get any deader.
Exactly.
Right? I was like, I guess. So, and then I figured it out. And now it's like, now doing the AHA stuff makes it easier. But man, I was so terrified. I was so scared when I was on the rig.
The first cardiac arrest I ran as a medic, I got lucky. I had an EMT who had been an EMT for a very long time, but we got called out for difficulty breathing. And, I got there and we had to walk through this guy's, what is it, like pea gravel driveway, which, the kind that eat up the stretcher tires.
Right?
So he's got all of his there's like 15 grandchildren all playing outside. We walk inside and there's this man that's probably 400 pounds. He takes 3 breaths and then stops breathing in his armchair. And I'm like, shit, of course, this is going to happen this way. So we managed to wrestle the stretcher inside, put him out there. It looked like we were plowing his front yard because the wheels wouldn't turn, got him in the back of the truck. And then I just completely blanked. I'm like, oh God, I know I do stuff, but I don't remember what to do or what order to do it in. And my partner was like, take 5 seconds and breathe and then start over. It was an absolute train wreck from start to finish because we couldn't fly anybody that day. And it was 45 minutes to get down the mountain to the hospital. And there were just 2 of us and some random first responder showed up to drive. Manual CPR for 45 minutes. Like the odds were tipped against this guy from the time we got there, but it was an absolute nightmare the entire time. And then the second one was a little easier. And then the third one was a little easier. And the fourth one was a little better. And like you said, that once you get that out of the way, it's not quite as intimidating.
Exactly. And that first one, what was the first time that you ever turned and like you like looked around and you realized there's nobody here to help me? What do I do?
Probably my first RSI. We had a guy who had been smoking with his oxygen on and it blew up in his face. So we rolled into his house and got him outside. He was awake and talking, but it was one of those. I remember in school, they said if you have airway burns to go ahead and RSI your patient. And his nose and, look down his throat, it was all red and raw. It's like, okay, perfect time. this will be easy because he's not about to die. I can go about this and do this very slowly. So I went through all my steps, and then I gave him 5 milligrams of Versed, and I sat there waiting for him to fall asleep. And I didn't realize, I wasn't thinking at the time, this is a big man. Like, it's going to take, this is not a therapeutic dose for someone this size. But I gave him 5 of Versed, sat there, and just kept patting him on the shoulder, and he kept looking at me going, huh? What? And after about 5 minutes of that, the helicopter landed outside, and I could see them. And then dispatch got on the radio and said, Air Medical wants to know where you are and why you're not loaded, what's going on with the patient. And I was like, we're still working on it. And I looked at the EMT that was in the back with me, and I went, shit, this is not working the way it's supposed to. I don't really know what else I'm supposed to do right now. And there's nobody to help. This is one of those, I'd like to ask the teacher for some assistance here, but there's no one else back here. So I was like, okay, well, you know what? If I get in trouble, I get in trouble. We gave another 5 milligrams of Versed, and he finally went out, and then we RSI'd him. But for about 3 minutes in the back of the truck, I sat there sweating bullets going, I don't actually know what I'm supposed to do. And I'm supposed to know it. And there's nobody else here that can do it. Like, it's kind of a hopeless feeling for a few minutes.
I remember the first time I felt like that. I had gone to this. It was like a Payless or a dollar store or something. I think it was Dollar Tree. And I show up for this like 43-year-old, 44-year-old female, and she called EMS because she wasn't feeling right. And so I was like, all right, like feeling like a big shot because I had a brand new EMT with me, and I was like, okay, cool, like I'm a medic, you're an EMT, like it's just the two of us, we got this. So I'm like, all right, watch and learn, right? And so I'm like, all right, go through this assessment. Dude, I did an assessment on her for 25 minutes. I could not find a damn thing wrong with her. Her blood pressure, 122/80. Heart rate was like 88, like perfect. SAT was 99. End tidal was perfect. Everything. Like, and I'm like, do you have pain? No. Do you have stomach pain? No. Do you have chest pain? No. Why'd you call 911? Because something doesn't feel right. Like, I don't feel right. Like, I feel like something bad is going to happen. That was the first time I ever heard those words in real life. And I was like, but I was so new that I was like, well, why'd you call? Like, I was getting frustrated, honestly, like as a brand new medic, like I was getting frustrated because I was like, I don't know why you're calling. Like, there's nothing I can do because everything is perfect. Like, you don't need meds, you don't need nitro, like everything's perfect. No chest pain, no anything. And I remember looking at like everything. I mean, heart rate, she had sinus rhythm. Like, I put her on a 4-lead, everything. Like, sugar, 90. Perfect. I'm like, okay. Like, do you want to go to the hospital? Yeah. I'm like, okay. I needed like a chief complaint other than just not feeling right. Like, even though everything was perfect. And so she's like, well, I sprained my ankle and I tripped and stubbed my toe like 2 weeks ago. And I was like, perfect, toe pain. I was like, I just put in like toe pain. I was like, twisted ankle and toe pain was like the chief complaint. And so I was like, cool. I called it in. I was like, hey, we're coming to you with like a 43-year-old female, like twisted ankle, toe pain. And they're like, okay, cool. And I remember I got her all connected to everything. And my basic's like, cool, I'll drive. You can take it. And I was like, all right, cool. So basic hops in. We start going. We're probably 25 minutes from the hospital. And with traffic and everything downtown Denver, of course. So then we get about halfway there, and I'm looking down, and I have my laptop, and I'm like typing my PCR, doing my thing, and I hear the monitor ding, 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 and I look up, and I'm like, hey, ma'am, I need you to breathe for me real quick. Your SAT's dropping a little bit. Like, I just assumed it was like that, like, oh, like breathe for me, And I look up, and her eyes rolled in the back of her head, and she was out cold. And I'm like, oh shit, this is VTAC. And I look at the monitor, and I was like, ah! And I didn't even think, like, every conscious thought went out of my head. And I was like, I looked around and I was like, oh, uh-oh. And I didn't even like think like, check a pulse, like start CPR, like, I was like, what do I do? And so I just remembered, shocker. And so I reached over, grabbed the pads, I ripped it open, I lifted up her shirt, I slapped the pads on, charged it, and I was like, I don't even think I checked for a pulse at that point. I just looked at it and I saw either VFib or VTAC, and I was like, okay, cool, like I'm clear, you're clear, we're all clear, and I shocked it. And I was like, oh my God, I just did that. And she like sat, and I called in. I remember grabbing the radio and I called in, and I was like, she's coding, like she's in VFib or whatever. I think it was VFib at the time. I was like, she's in VFib. she's coding. We're bringing her in. I'm delivering a shock. I'm getting every code protocol. We're like 10 minutes out. We'll see on arrival. And they were like, okay, we'll have code team ready. And it happened again. Like she woke up after. I remember she kind of sat up and looked at me and she was like, and she looked at me. She goes, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "I think I need to change my underwear, but are you okay?" And she's like, "Yeah." She's like, "I feel like I just took a really good nap." And I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "You did. You almost took a dirt nap. Like that. What happened? Like you were fine." And she's like, "I don't know." She goes, "But my chest really hurts." And I'm like, "Yeah, you had 200 joules of electricity just go through your system. Like feel like you got kicked in the chest by by a horse." Uh, it was so funny because then we got to the hospital and the doctor's like, "I thought you said she was coding," and I was like, "She did." And he's like, "But she's in sinus rhythm." And I had to go out and print the report off the monitor, rip it off, and take it in to show him. And he's like, "Yeah, that was VFib, all right." He goes, "You shocked her?" I'm like, "Yeah." "Where's her IVs?" And I was like, "I don't
I didn't.
know." I was like, dude, I couldn't think. Like, that was my first, like, big, like, when I turned around and I was like, there's nobody here but me and I don't know what to do. And, like, everything just went out of my head. And it was the first time that something like that happened to me. Like, everything else has always been so routine, like, during my training and stuff, other than, like, that incident, you know?
Yeah, there was. I remember my partner and I'd run several codes at this point, but they'd all been the same. They were asystole. First code on, they were all asystole, which is easy. You don't have to think
Right,
about it.
right.
And we had a code, and I'm like, okay, we'll put this on. It'll be asystole. We'll do some CPR. We'll give some epi, whatever. Well, I put it on. And he was in VTAC, and my mind just went because I looked at this and I'm like, I'm supposed to do something. What am I supposed to do? I reached down and took a snapshot of the rhythm, and my partner leaned over and he's like, because he didn't hear the monitor charging, and he's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "It's VTAC. I'm taking a snapshot to show the doctor." And he's like, "Check that stuff." And I'm like, "Oh, right, that's the thing I'm forgetting to do." But it's incredible how, like, in the moment, you immediately just forget everything.
Right. I think people have like this glorified like idea that every call is going to be like night watch or going to be like the TV, and I think that a lot of people don't realize that it's you almost have to have like a stress inoculation aspect to it because like you have to do it because the first 30 or so times is not going to be like it is on TV, it's going to be chaotic and sometimes a little bit of a shit show. I have had really good calls, but then there's other calls like where I was starting where I was so scared and I was so new. Uh, you know, I don't know. Do you ever have those moments to like really humble you as a provider where you're like, holy
Oh, yeah.
cow? Have you ever had like a special like humble moment?
Oh, yeah. I think I've talked about this one on my channel before. My very first call ever as an EMT student. Um, it was my first clinical. I had like this was the first time I ever put on BDUs. I was a badass because I knew how to do CPR and I was going to save lives. And I showed up to the station during crew change, and then a call came in, and I immediately went. I got in the back of the truck. I'm like, "All right, we're going to go do stuff." And they didn't tell me what it was, but the night crew hopped in the back of the ambulance with me as the day crew hopped in the front. And the five of us started going the wrong way down the road to get to the going down the wrong way down an on ramp to get onto the interstate. And I'm like, okay, it's a car accident. I'll hold C spine. I can do that. That's in my scope of practice. I'm going to learn a lot today. This is fine. I'm an EMT. I got this. We got there, and a vehicle, it was a Carmagia, which I didn't know what that was, but something about the size of a Mazda Miata basically looked like an accordion. This car pulled over to the side of the road, and then as he got ready to merge back into traffic, didn't look and got hit by an 18 wheeler that was doing like 80, 85 miles an hour and just smashed his car. He was still alive, but he was just sort of broken. And I remember the four of them got out and started to extricate this guy from the car. And I was standing on the side of the road, and I remember I could not stop my knees from shaking. It was just this massive adrenaline dump. And I was completely useless. I had no idea what to do. We managed to get him in the back of the truck. My whole job was to cut his pants off, but somebody had to hand me scissors because I couldn't physically get mine off my belt because I was shaking so bad. And I cut his pants off, and all the only thing I could muster to say was, "Do I cut off his underwear?" And like this really sad, scared, broken child voice. But immediately, like, I'm glad I got humbled early because that
Mm-hmm.
immediately, I didn't know anything
Yeah.
at all.
Right. I am so thankful for the opportunity to teach because I think I think teaching has a big aspect in making you a better provider when you're constantly repeating the basics over and over and over and over, night after night. I remember the first time I ever got humbled. I had this mid 50s dude who was a construction worker, and they were putting the big metal, like 30,000 pound plates in the road, like down in the ditch on the side of like a big boulevard. And so we got there, and he had gone for his cell phone. He dropped his cell phone as they were lowering the plate, and he thought, "Oh, I have time. I can go back in, grab my phone, and get out before the plate came down." Right? And sure enough, he got pinned under, and he was face down in the dirt. So the only way we could really get him out, we had to call heavy rescue and all these different fire agencies, and it was this multi-agency event. And as stupid as it is, Sleepy, the one thing that humbled me was I was trying to draw up Versed. You know how thick and heavy those benzos are, right? And I was so nervous at trying to get the meds into him that I was drawing it up with, of course, the only needle that they had in the entire freaking ambulance, which is like a 25 gauge IM needle, right?
Yep.
And I'm sitting there and I'm struggling, and I'm like pushing back and pulling and pushing back and pulling, and I'm sweating because you have all these seasoned veterans, experienced medics that have been doing it for 30 years. And then you have my little, pink patch 2-month-old paramedic self who is sitting there trying to drop the pain meds and the Versed. And I couldn't get it. And I was like, at that point, I turned around and they're like, "You realize he needs these meds. Like, get these meds." And one of these, like, this really cool SWAT medic came over and goes, "All right, man, look here." And he takes his like red blunt needle, like he grabs a whole hand of them from the hospital, and he pulled one out and did it, and he had the cap in the side of his cheek. He's like, and he's like, this old veteran SWAT medic, and he draws it up and he's like, "Here you go, young buck." And I was like, oh snap, I want to be like that dude. But it humbled me because I realized that even something as stupid as drawing up meds was something to learn how to do on the street. And it really humbled me as a provider, and it reminded me to always kind of realize that there's other people I can learn from, no matter how like seasoned. There's always more seasoned people that you can learn from, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I try to tell people that and be like, hey, no matter what, like, you're just because the color of your patch doesn't mean anything. Like, you could always learn from everybody in your team, right?
Oh yeah. There's a guy I used to work with named Eddie who was a career EMT, but the guy was the one you wanted to work on you. Like over half of the medics that worked there, this EMT could run circles around because he'd been doing it for like 25, 30 years.
Right.
Fergus. Hey, Fergus, leave the cat alone. Sorry. Big 97 wants to play with the 8-pound cat.
It's all right. My kid was out in the backyard the other day, and of course, my dog's name is Whiskey, right? So of course he's running up and down, and everything, and the neighbor kid was playing with Grayson and Whiskey, and the neighbor kid starts yelling. He's a little bit older than Grayson, and his mom's like, "Hey, come inside! Time to come inside." And the kid goes, "No, Mom, I want my whiskey. I want my
Oh,
whiskey. I want whiskey. Mom, give me my whiskey back." And I thought, oh man, this kid's gonna get taken away by DCFS, right? I was laughing so hard, dude, because that little kid was running up, "Whiskey, whiskey, I want my whiskey. I want my whiskey back. Mom, give me my whiskey back." And I'm like, that is freaking priceless.
that's amazing. That's horrifying, but it's amazing.
I was like, man, perfect time to name my dog Whiskey. So everyone's like, "I want whiskey, I want whiskey." So I was like, all right, we got to make a Whiskey Wednesday, where we just sit there, sip whiskey, and shoot the shit. Yeah, I thought that was pretty funny. So dogs, I totally get it, because here I am sitting there, and all of a sudden I hear from the backyard, "I want my whiskey," and I'm like, what?
Well, he's been in there terrorizing the cats for like the last 20 minutes. So I've just been listening. The cats are kind of paranoid. Like he'll be on the other side of the room and they'll start because he's this giant horse that lives in my living room. But he's got a bone now. He's happy. He'll stop eating all of my shoes.
There you go. Exactly.
Not the Crocs.
Not the Crocs.
No, please don't. No, the Crocs and the Croc boots are locked up tight.
All right. So, we put this challenge out this last week, and we said that somebody has to come up with an idea for you and I to do together. So, what do you think about that challenge? What do you think about us doing something together?
I started reading through, and it was a lot of trivia stuff, which you would smoke me on. You know enough about
Whatever.
it to teach other people how to do it. The stretcher surfing sounded like fun, but it also sounds like a good way to wind up in the hospital.
Sorry, we're all EMTs.
Exactly. That's when we go, here, hold my nos.
That's what scares me. I don't know. It's been a couple days since I've read through it. What are some good ones that you found on there?
I don't know. I heard that somebody say that we both had to shave one side of our beard and leave the other side intact. I was like, all right.
It's funny you mentioned that because back when my hair was really thick, anytime I fly, I have to shave.
Right.
So you can see it like you'll know when I go fly because in my videos all of a sudden my facial hair is gone. I did that. I actually went and shaved half my face and I walked out and just sat next to my wife and waited for her to notice. But it was really, really like Grizzly Adams thick on one side, so it made for a great contrast. But yeah, I would shave half my face and walk around for a couple days like that.
See,
Let me. I need to grow it out a little bit first because right now it's just thick enough to start looking white trash.
whatever, man. Just think, you have that McSexy, McSteamy look going on from Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah, yeah, whatever.
And the accent too. The accent adds it all away, bro.
But yeah, you know what? Just to see you shave half your face, I'd shave half of mine.
All right.
All right, then we can pick the coin winner together.
Heck yeah. So I'm supposed to ask you what you think about us adding you to our giveaway, and tell people to follow him. Yeah. So everybody follow Sleepy Paramedic and follow us. We have a new OnlyFans called No, I'm just joking. On TikTok. We were joking the other day. We're like, we should come up with names for our EMS OnlyFans, and we were like, there's so many, dude. So many names you could come up with for an EMS OnlyFans. And like we would sell pictures like people's boots on the gurney.
Yeah, my wife shut that down when I told her I wanted to start an OnlyFans where it's just me walking around Lowe's looking at the ceiling fans. She said, "No, you don't need that publicity." I'm like, "Come on, it'd be really funny."
Only EMTs.
Exactly. We were like, man, we got to do something this day and age to bring some revenue in. Come on, I'm telling you what. I'll tell you what.
Sound like my neighbor.
You should have heard me when I moved back from Louisiana, man. I spent 10 years down there working and everything, and I came back home to Utah. And like the first week, I'm working on this street. And, everybody down in the South is like, hey, honey, hey, sugar, hey, baby, and it's like, it's not like it's just a Southern thing, right? I get up here to Utah, and of course I had the accent, and I was like, hey, baby, hey, sugar, how you doing, and people were like, you can't say that up here. I was like, what? And like my manager had to bring me and be like, this is Utah. You can't say stuff like that in Utah. And I'm like what? And they're like, you can't call people honey and baby and sugar. And I'm like, but that's how we do it in the South. That's just like a Southern thing.
That's programmed. You can't unprogram that.
Right. It took me a couple years to like reprogram it. And now I'm like a Utah person again. But yeah, it was kind of funny coming back. Everybody's like, man, you from the South, you got a Southern accent like no other.
Yeah, my wife is from Minnesota, so it took a while for her to get used to people referring to her as ma'am down here because calling people sir and ma'am up north, unless they are substantially older than you, is considered a slight or an insult. So,
Okay.
yeah, that which is weird because everybody down here is sir and ma'am. It doesn't matter if they're 10 years younger than you; they're all
Right.
sir and ma'am.
Right.
But no,
Exactly.
a big insult to her apparently.
Yeah, out here in the West, it's a big one. It's a big insult like that too, sir, ma'am. They're like, don't call me sir. I'm like, well, better than honey or sugar or baby.
I need a good informal way to address people. Somebody, you don't care what it is. Tell me what to say.
Exactly. What you writing on that board?
Instructions.
Okay. So, but man, Sleepy dude, I appreciate you, dude. I appreciate everything. I appreciate the love and support, man. Appreciate you taking time with us today. I look forward to doing this again. This is fun.
Yeah, I like talking to you guys. You guys are some of my favorite people on here.
Awesome. Likewise, you're our favorite person on here. I know, and we're gonna be doing stuff with Zach of all trades and Badge 503. Oh, I want to get Firefighter Chronicles on here too. That would be dope.
Oh yeah, that'd be awesome.
That
He's
was
a hard one to get a hold of though, because he's always working on something.
Right? Exactly.
that was one of the suggestions on the giveaway video was us to do something with him. So
Well, and here's the other thing too. So tell me what you think about this idea. So the other day, and this is a true story. The other day, I'm sitting in my office, and I have this whole new class, right? And this class is so young. These are serious, like Gen Z, like these kids. And for me, dude, I'm an old soul. Like, you know, there's slang that they're using that I'm like, I don't even know what it is, but it sounds like, you know, I don't even know. And so the other day, one of the students walks in, and and she's like, "All right, Andrew, we're gonna do a video series, and we're gonna do it every day, and I'm gonna teach you one new slang word and see if you can implement it in your teaching, and teach you these new modern slang terms." And so I'm like, "All right." So she comes in and she's like, "Look, you got to use the word bussin', all right?" And I'm
Oh
like,
god.
"What?" And so I go out and I'm like, "Yeah, we're gonna be busting these people from point A to point B." And she starts laughing and she goes, "No, dude, that is not what busting means." And I'm like, "Well, I don't know what it means. You just tell me what it is. You don't tell me what it means." And she's like, "That's the hilarious part is watching you use it incorrectly." So apparently, like the newest thing is trying to teach me slang. So there you go.
Yeah, good luck. I've got so all of the neighbors out here have kids that range between the ages of like 6 and 15. If you just stand outside, you hear it. Like the kids that live next door, one of them was over here with my wife when I got home. They were cooking or something, and she worked into the conversation. She just looked at me and she touched her forearm with her fingers and went, "Sheesh." I have no idea what that's supposed to mean, but it didn't have a negative connotation to it, so I guess it was okay. But I used to work with a guy who was, God, how old was he? Probably 15 years younger than me. Absolutely loved trying to use his slang in front of him because it made him wildly uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So once you get proficient in it, I think you should try to use it as much as possible, just to really just get under the skin of all of the Gen Zers that are there.
Right? Exactly. The other night we were on a call and I was like, "That's lit." And everyone turned and looked at me and I was like, "Really?" I was like, "All right." I was like, the students were like, "Okay, at least you used it correctly." And I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "That was lit."
cameraman looks of
I
disapproval.
think one that he hates.
Exactly. Austin's face over there is just like,
Yep, that's the desired reaction. It's like dad jokes. It's just meant to inflict pain on other people.
exactly. So with that, today's been lit.
God, for real. No cap.
No kizzy.
Ending this recording.
There we go. All right, man. Well, thanks, Sleepy. I sure appreciate you, man. I hope you have a good day today, and we're gonna go, and I gotta get back to work.
All right, buddy. You take care, and I'll see you the next time we do this.
Sounds good, man. Have a good day.